The Ubisoft employee strike against the company has gone international. No longer is it just happening in France, but it has spread to Italy, and who knows where it will go next. Will we see it here in the United States? Will we see it in Canada as they are trying to polish up Assassin's Creed Shadows as their company goes down the tubes? Before we get to this, I'd like to ask, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. I wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com, and it's been reported that 700 Ubisoft employees went on strike throughout France earlier this week. If you recall, this French video game union, Syndicat des Travailleurs du Jeu Vidéo, called for Ubisoft employees to strike on October 15th, 16th, and 17th back in September. The strike was called after the company demanded employees begin working in the company's offices for 3 days per week for all employees. The union also shared that it believes Ubisoft made this move given it knows, quote, the consequences of its decision will be the loss of our colleagues' jobs, the disorganization of many game projects, and the drastic increase in psychosocial risks for those who remain. So I actually think they are 100% accurate on this. I think the Ubisoft executives, the management, know that their company is in dire straits. And what better way than to cull staff than try to mandate a new work requirement in order to try and weed out people without having to give them severance if you had to lay them off. This is exactly something that I think this despicable company would do to its own employees, because at the end of the day, these people literally don't care about other people. They just use them as props to push their message, push their ideology. We know this because it's literally all over the company's website. And we know that companies do this because the Warner Brothers Discovery head of their DEI department literally admitted that he actively tries to get people to leave the company who are not aligned with woke ideology. So if you've got executives admitting that they do this just to get rid of people who are not aligned with woke ideology, imagine what they will do if they want to literally stave off their company going completely under, and they need to cut overhead costs, which obviously employees usually are making up the most of that because all the benefits and everything on top of salary. So I definitely think this is something that this company would indeed do, and it is absolutely despicable. But the union also said this. They said this decision is announced immediately after the failure of the profit-sharing negotiations, exactly like previous salary negotiations. Management's proposals were unacceptable. The negotiations timetable was appalling, and management was deaf to the proposals of the various employee representatives. To express our anger, we call all Ubisoft employees in France to a first strike on October 15, 16, and 17. So they're saying first strike. There could be more. There could be more. Remember, we're just on that third day of the strike right now, and it is already spreading to Italy, which we will get to here in a little bit. But they might not have any profit to share, which we'll get to that in a little bit too, if things keep going the way they are at Ubisoft. And then shared a list of demands. They want a formal agreement on remote work with a due process of real negotiation between management and unions, not an arbitrary decision taken several months in advance, one which guarantees that each person can freely choose its number of remote days and when they are in the week, as well as being counted by the month and not by the week. The union also had for their second demand, they said this: an immediate increase in all salaries to compensate for the drop in our living standards in recent years, the restoration of the profit sharing at a 60% objective, the end of the gender pay gap, and a higher increase in low salaries. I doubt that there actually is a gender pay gap. If you actually dive into a lot of that stuff, it's complete and utter bunk because you have different people doing different jobs, and usually the higher paying jobs are made up of men because they're doing different types of work. Now, who knows if that's the case at Ubisoft? We know this company does indeed discriminate, so it's possible that they could be discriminating against men, but given the fact that this is a union, I'm going on the assumption that it's probably feminist propaganda right here that they're trying to push. And then finally, they said this, that they want Ubisoft to listen to employees' opinions by the implementation of a social dialogue worthy of the name. Management seems indeed to confuse monologue with dialogue. So those are their demands. And we have this report here from French news outlet Le Monde reporting that around 700 employees did go on strike on the first day, October 15th. They said this: AFP saw around 50 people on a picket line in Montpellier and more than 100 in Paris, with Ubisoft offices in Annecy and Lyon also affected. The STJV union said more than 700 were taking part. So more than 700 people throughout France in Ubisoft took part. That's around 4% of the entire company across the world. So they have around, they say on their site, they have 20,000 employees, and we're looking at over 700 people. So you're looking at what, 3.5%, 4% of their entire company is striking just in France. And like I said, it is moving internationally here as well. This is what one employee told Le Monde. How long will it be before they start laying off workers and downgrading their ambitions? I think that's already happening. We're already seeing that. And they already started laying off workers. We saw that happen just a couple of months ago, maybe 2 months ago, I want to say, where they were laying off people in their North Carolina office, as well as in one of their offices out in California. I think it's San Francisco. And then she also described the atmosphere as gloomy. Yeah, I would imagine that it's rather gloomy over there at Ubisoft. Probably has been so for a long time. There's a bunch of other people, as well as like a union boss who did some interviews here. I don't really know what they said because I don't speak French, and I couldn't find any kind of translation of it. So if you speak French and you want to translate some of that, please share that in the comments with me, or message me on DM, because I would be interested in understanding what they had to say here. But the union did post this in English, announcing that the strike has gone international. It says today, workers at Ubisoft Milan are also on strike against a return to 3 days a week in office. Full support to them and to, I guess this is the Italian union that is organizing the strike, Federazione Impiegati Apparai Metallurgici. So that is the strike has gone international. It is now in Italy at Ubisoft Milan as well. And I would not be surprised if we see it maybe come to Canada, to the United States. I'm not sure if Ubisoft employees here in the US or in Canada are unionized or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are unionized, you see the strike come over here as well. And as I've kind of touched on throughout this video here, the strike comes amid Ubisoft finding itself in dire financial straits. Back in September, the company significantly lowered its Q2 net bookings from 500 million euro to between 350 and 378 million euro. That is a decline of 30%. Furthermore, the company also said this: the company now expects net bookings of around 1.95 billion euro and around break-even non-IFRS operating income and free cash flow for the fiscal year. So like I said, they aren't even expecting to be profitable. They're saying around a break even. And when I see language like that, that to me seems like they're going to be under. They're going to be operating at a loss, that their costs are actually exceeding the revenue that they are bringing in. To kind of show you what that looks like, they had 2.321 billion in net bookings last fiscal year. So when they're downgrading to 1.95 billion, that is nearly 16% decline in net bookings from last year. And I can't even remember what games they released last year. I would assume that a lot of it's probably stuff coming in back sales, like their Assassin's Creed catalog, the Rainbow Six catalog, etc. But I mean, they had major releases this year and clearly are going to have revenue below what they did last year. I mean, that just kind of shows you the state that this company is in when you can have a Star Wars Outlaws release, when you have your new live service game, X Defiant, releasing, you're going to have less revenue this fiscal year than you did last year. I mean, they released Skull and Bones as well. Just really, really grim stuff happening here with this company. The company's also been accused by Slovakian investment firm AJ Investments of intentionally manipulating its stock price alongside Chinese developer and investor Tencent. The AJ Investments alleged this in an open letter in September. They says, we believe that Guillemot family and Tencent are discounting potential value of Ubisoft in order to buy more shares at lower valuation and eventually take full control of the company at heavily discounted valuation. We value the great work that has been done by the Guillemots over the decades in the Ubisoft, but now it's time to move on and restart the business with new shareholder approach and new management CEO. They even pointed to Ubisoft delaying titles as being part of this strategy to discount the value of the company so they can decrease the stock price so they can be the ones buying it up and taking control of it. And AJ Investments said this: in our view, recent delays of certain titles there are creating uncertainty amongst investors. Is beneficial for Guillemot and Tencent in order to acquire more shares at even discounted valuation, as Ubisoft is currently trading close to 15 euro per share. I think it's around 10 now. I haven't looked in the last week or so. I know it had rallied, but it was just rallied around 10. I know it had fallen at like one point. It was close to like, it was getting into the 8 euro mark. So it had even fallen almost over half after they had written this. Per share, lowest since 2015. It's gotten lower, right? Giving Ubisoft valuation less than 2 billion euro. The firm also alleged that the Guillemot family and Tencent's collaboration blocked, quote, potential acquisitions and partnerships that could have been beneficial for the company and its shareholders. It cited a possible acquisition by investment firms KKR and Blackstone. And they said this: more recently in 2022, private equity firms such as KKR and Blackstone expressed interest in acquiring Ubisoft, but were unable to proceed due to existing agreements that prevent any single entity from gaining control without Guillemot and Tencent's consent. This pattern of blocking potential acquisitions has prevented much needed restructuring and revitalization that will benefit all the stakeholders of Ubisoft. And then we got this rumor from an alleged Ubisoft insider who told Endymion that Ubisoft was using the implementation of Yasuke into their game to steer the public reception of not only Shadows, but Ubisoft as a company in general towards a scenario that would actually lead to a buyout. So this insider is alleging that not only were they trying to manipulate stock price, I guess, by delaying games, etc., but also by injecting Yasuke into Assassin's Creed Shadows. He says, as I was told, this is what Endymion is saying, as I was told, Tencent allegedly was a big pusher of Yasuke becoming the main character of Shadows. Ubisoft, of course, was considering the idea, but Tencent was really the ones that pushed that vision into reality. Allegedly, Yasuke was pushed because Tencent knew the inclusion of his character as the leading man in a Japanese Assassin's game would raise many eyebrows and cause public outcry, which, I mean, they're right. It did exactly that. And the discussion surrounding the game has not died down since, for good reason. He went on and added this: as I'm told, decisions like implementing Yasuke, which would lead to many boycotting the game, was something pushed by Tencent investors to purposely tank Ubisoft in order to weaken the company towards an acquisition, effectively leading to Ubisoft, as we know, becoming far weaker, worth far less than it should be, and placing itself plump and ready for Tencent to waltz in and swallow the entire company whole and obtain them. This is not out of the ordinary. Just kind of look up what the Chinese did with dumping and how they were able to kind of take control of entire sectors of industries through that strategy before people started catching on to it. We also had this report from Vinci Chan, Dong Cao, and Benoit Berthelot over at Bloomberg, claiming that Tencent Holdings and the Guillemot family were, quote, considering options, including a potential buyout of the French video game developer after it lost more than half its market value this year, according to people familiar with the matter. If you go back 5 years, it's lost almost 90% of its market value. I think it was closing in on that number, definitely in the 80s, depending on what day it was at. The report added this: the Chinese tech company and Guillemot Brothers Limited have been speaking with advisors to help explore ways to stabilize Ubisoft and bolster its value. The people said, asked not to be identified, discussing a private matter. One of the possibilities being discussed would involve teaming up to take the company private, according to the people. An Ubisoft spokesman appeared to confirm this, telling BGC, Ubisoft has noted recent press speculation regarding potential interests about the company or around the company. It regularly reviews all its strategic options in the interest of stakeholders and will inform the market if and when appropriate. And I think by actually like even issuing this statement, they are indeed kind of confirming this. Otherwise, there might be radio silence and they would just not even give a statement. Nevertheless, the spokesman added this: the company reiterates that management is currently focused on executing its strategy centered on two core verticals: open world adventures and games as a service, native experiences. I didn't even get into what's happening with XDefiant and all the rumors around that. The latest one being that the entire game could lose support from Ubisoft, basically be shut down by the end of its first year, by the end of season 4. So we're looking at maybe May, June, that game could be shut down because it's completely lost its player base. There's a report, I think it's from True Achievements, indicating that they lost over 90% of its players based on this 2.3 or something like that player sample that they have access to. So not looking good for that. Obviously, we know that they admitted that Star Wars Outlaws sales were softer than expected. There's a report that they sold about 1 million copies in just a single month, which was way down from even the conservative estimates that they were expecting, which was 5 million. And again, I can't I can't emphasize that point enough. They thought it was conservative to have 5 million. They thought that was low. They thought 5 million was low based on how Ubisoft was trying to hype this game up throughout the year. And we're getting a rumor saying that they did around 1 million, might not have even done 1 million. And I'm hearing from some of my retail sources that this game has not moved any units since it went on sale. Basically, there is zero interest in this, and I don't think any kind of bug fixes or anything that they try to do to this game will salvage it. Its reputation has been cemented. It will not be a Cyberpunk 2077. I do not think gamers are willing to give this game a second chance whatsoever, given the fact that at its core, it really isn't a game. It is DEI, and that is what they're really trying to sell you. DEI disguised as a game. They aren't actually trying to sell you escapism. They aren't trying to sell you fantasy. They aren't trying to sell you entertainment. They are trying to sell you feminism. They're trying to sell you the DEI agenda. So it's not looking good at all for Ubisoft whatsoever. And now their employees are striking. Again, we're looking at 4%. Around 4% of their entire global staff is striking, and it's spreading. It's spreading. It's not just in France now. It is now in Italy, and who knows if it makes it across the Atlantic and they start striking here in the U.S. or Canada. I do not think that is out of the realm of possibility because everything about this company is just disastrous. And they did it to themselves. They did this all to themselves. They have no one to blame but themselves. They're the ones who decided to turn their video game company into a piece of part of the political propaganda machine. They chose to do that. They did not have to make that choice, but that's the one that they did. And now they are paying the price for that decision. They're paying the price for taking the ticket for selling out. But let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, but to always speak the truth.